My name is Arthur Jenkins. I'm 42 years old, and for the past 2 decades, I've been a high school history teacher in a quiet suburban town. It's a job I love, filled with the dusty scent of old books and the bright, sometimes chaotic, energy of young minds. My life, at least from the outside, was what most people would call perfect. I lived in a charming 2-story house with a well-tended garden in Maple Creek, a town where everyone knew everyone, and the biggest scandal was usually a rogue squirrel in Mrs. Henderson's bird feeder. I had a stable job, good friends, and what I believed was a loving marriage to Sarah. Sarah was 40, a successful marketing executive for a regional real estate firm. She was sharp, ambitious, and, to be honest, a little intimidating. But I loved her. We met in college, 2 awkward bookworms finding solace in each other's company, and our relationship blossomed into what I thought was an unshakable bond. We'd been married for 15 years, a lifetime in modern terms, and we had built a comfortable, predictable existence together. Our routine was a well-oiled machine. I'd wake up early, grade papers, and then head to school. Sarah would be off to her high-powered meetings, always impeccably dressed, always on the go. Evenings were our sanctuary. I enjoyed cooking. It was a way for me to decompress, to express a different kind of creativity than I found in the classroom. I wasn't a gourmet chef, by any stretch, but I considered myself a solid home cook. I experimented with recipes, tried new cuisines, and always put love into every meal. Or so I thought. Looking back, the signs were there, subtle at first, like faint whispers on the wind that I, in my naive contentment, chose to ignore. Sarah had always been particular, a perfectionist in every aspect of her life. Her clothes, her hair, her work presentations, everything had to be flawless. And gradually, that perfectionism began to bleed into her expectations of me, particularly in the kitchen. It started innocently enough. "Honey, this chicken is a little dry," she'd say, picking at a piece with her fork, her brows slightly furrowed. Or, "Did you use enough salt in the pasta? It tastes a bit bland." I'd brush it off, attributing it to a bad day at work or just her discerning palate. After all, everyone had off days in the kitchen, right? My friends and family always complimented my cooking. My famous lasagna was a staple at every potluck, and my barbecue ribs were legendary among my colleagues. But Sarah's critiques grew more frequent, more pointed. She'd bring home gourmet meals from expensive restaurants for herself, claiming she just wasn't in the mood for another one of my experiments. She started making passive-aggressive comments about needing to expand our culinary horizons. I offered to take cooking classes, hoping to impress her, but she just waved it off, saying, "Oh, Arthur, it's not about technique, it's about flair. Some people just have it, some don't." Her tone, though seemingly casual, always carried a hint of dismissiveness that stung more than I cared to admit. One particular evening, about 6 months before everything imploded, I decided to make my signature beef bourguignon. It was a laborious dish, slow-cooked for hours, rich with red wine, tender beef, and aromatic vegetables. I'd spent all afternoon carefully preparing it, confident that this dish, at least, would win her over. When she came home, the aroma filled the house. I watched, hopeful, as she took her first bite. She chewed slowly, contemplatively, then set her fork down. "It's fine, Arthur," she said, without looking at me. "But honestly, it's just so heavy. And a bit rustic. I think I'll just have a salad." "Rustic?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I'd poured my heart into that meal. She shrugged, already scrolling through her phone. "You know, not exactly what I'd call elevated cuisine. It's barely edible, really. Barely edible." The words hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Barely edible. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. It wasn't just about the food anymore. It was about her perception of me, her casual disregard for my efforts, for my passion. It was a sneer wrapped in a backhanded compliment. But still, I pushed it down. I rationalized. She was stressed. She had high standards. I was just overthinking it. This was my mistake, my fatal flaw. I wanted to believe in the perfect life, the perfect wife, so desperately that I ignored the gaping cracks forming beneath my feet. The truth, as it always does, revealed itself in the most brutal, undeniable way. It was a Tuesday evening in late March. Sarah had been working late more often than usual, attributing it to a big new client. I, ever the trusting husband, bought it hook, line, and sinker. I was at home, correcting history essays, when my phone buzzed with a text message. It wasn't for me. It was for Sarah. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, screen up, and the preview popped up. A name I didn't recognize, Mark. The message read, "Can't wait for our trip next month, my little gourmet queen. Hope Arthur's not making you eat his barely edible concoctions tonight." My blood ran cold. Gourmet queen. Barely edible. The emoji. A sickening wave of nausea washed over me. It couldn't be. Not Sarah. Not my Sarah. But the words, so specific, so cutting, echoed her exact sentiments. My hands trembled as I picked up her phone. I knew it was wrong, a violation of trust, but at that moment, trust was already shattered. I entered her easily guessable passcode, our anniversary date, and plunged into the abyss. What I found was a horrifying tapestry of deception woven over months. Texts, photos, shared calendars. Mark wasn't just a colleague, he was the head of Sarah's department, a charismatic, wealthy man known for his lavish lifestyle and impeccable taste. Their messages were filled with flirtatious banter, plans for secret weekend getaways, and increasingly intimate exchanges. There were photos of them together, at a fancy restaurant, laughing over champagne, on a beach, her hand resting playfully on his arm, a selfie of them kissing, her eyes sparkling with a joy I hadn't seen directed at me in years. My heart didn't just break, it pulverized. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was an emotional massacre. They mocked my cooking, my simple pleasures, my predictable life. Sarah had been living a double life, meticulously crafted, while I was here, dutifully preparing barely edible dinners, believing I was loved. One text, in particular, burned itself into my memory. It was from Sarah to Mark, honestly, sometimes I just want to scream. Another one of Arthur's culinary creations tonight. If I have to eat another one of his bland, rustic meals, I'll lose it. Can't wait for Paris with you next month, where the food actually has flavor. Paris. They were planning a trip to Paris, the city of love, the city we had always dreamed of visiting for our 20th anniversary. My world, my perfect, predictable, comfortable world, imploded in an instant. The man who texted her, the man she was calling her gourmet king, was offering her everything she subtly implied I couldn't: excitement, sophistication, and a palate that appreciated flavor. I spent the rest of the night in a daze, going through every single message, every photo, piecing together the timeline of their affair. It had been going on for over a year, right under my nose, escalating from discreet lunches to full-blown romantic excursions. I felt like a fool, a clueless husband in a bad sitcom. The anger wasn't a sudden burst, it was a slow, creeping frost that solidified into a cold, hard resolve. By dawn, the tears had dried, replaced by a steely glint in my eyes. Sarah was due home from work around midnight. I heard her car pull into the driveway, heard her footsteps, and then the quiet click of her bedroom door. She didn't even bother to check if I was awake. She probably assumed I was fast asleep, dreaming of her, oblivious. But I wasn't oblivious anymore. I was awake. And I was planning. The betrayal, the humiliation, the casual cruelty of her words, barely edible, resonated deep within me. It wasn't just about the affair, it was about the profound disrespect, the way she had belittled my efforts, my character. That morning, I didn't confront her. I just observed her, a stranger in my home. She ate the breakfast I made for her, oatmeal with berries, healthy and bland, I imagine she thought, oblivious to the storm brewing within me. As she left for work, giving me a perfunctory peck on the cheek, I knew exactly what I had to do. Revenge. But not just any revenge. A revenge that would hit her where it hurt the most, her reputation, her carefully constructed image of sophistication, and her connection to her gourmet king, Mark. And I would use the very thing she ridiculed to bring her down. My cooking. My planning began immediately. My background as a history teacher, ironically, made me a meticulous researcher and strategist. I was used to dissecting primary sources, identifying patterns, and crafting compelling narratives. This was simply a different kind of narrative, a different kind of war. First, I needed more evidence. While her phone had provided the smoking gun, I needed a comprehensive dossier. I discreetly installed spyware on her work laptop and phone, something I'd learned about from a tech-savvy student who had once gotten into trouble for similar activities. It was a moral gray area, but my moral compass had been shattered by her deceit. I started recording her calls, monitoring her emails, and tracking her movements. I learned about their shared projects, their clandestine meetings, the exact dates of their planned business trips, which, of course, were merely pretexts for their romantic escapades. I learned that Mark had a wife and 2 young children, a detail Sarah had conveniently omitted in her internal narrative. This affair wasn't just hurting me, it was destroying another family. My plan began to crystallize around the annual Maple Creek County Fair. It was a huge event in our town, a week-long celebration of community, agriculture, and, crucially, competitive cooking. Every year, there was a fiercely contested Best Dish competition, judged by a panel of local culinary experts and, more importantly, broadcast on the local news channel. Sarah, with her image-conscious nature, loved attending the fair. It was a prime networking opportunity for her, a chance to be seen with influential people, to maintain her facade of the perfect, respectable executive. This was my stage. My revenge would be a 2-pronged attack, public humiliation and exposure of her affair, all orchestrated through the culinary competition. I wouldn't just win, I would win with a dish that directly contradicted her dismissive critique. I decided to enter the savory dishes category, which was highly competitive and garnered significant local media attention. For weeks, I buried myself in cookbooks, culinary history texts, and online forums. I wasn't just cooking, I was studying, analyzing, perfecting. I practiced every technique, every flavor profile. I learned about food presentation, about the science of taste, about the subtle art of impressing judges. I even went to local restaurants, ordering dishes and trying to reverse engineer their success. My kitchen transformed into a laboratory. I spent hours perfecting a single sauce, adjusting seasonings by the smallest fraction, timing everything to the second. My goal wasn't just to make something edible, it was to create something undeniably, exquisitely delicious, something that would scream masterpiece to anyone who tasted it. The dish I settled on was a deconstructed coq au vin, served with a delicate Parmesan risotto and perfectly blanched asparagus. It was a classic, but my version would be elevated, refined, and utterly flavorful. It would be complex yet approachable, a testament to skill and passion. It would be everything Sarah claimed I wasn't capable of. While I was honing my culinary skills, I was also gathering my other weapon, the affair evidence. I compiled a discreet, anonymous packet, filled with printed screenshots of texts, emails, and photos of Sarah and Mark. I even included copies of their travel itineraries, highlighting the discrepancies between her business trips and their romantic rendezvous. I made sure to include Mark's full name and his wife's contact information. I had no intention of directly contacting his wife myself, but the information would be crucial for the next phase. My plan for the reveal was simple but devastating. The county fair's Best Dish award ceremony was a public event, often attended by local dignitaries and, crucially, by Sarah and Mark's boss, Mr. Henderson, a pillar of the community and the head of their real estate firm. I knew Sarah would be there, networking, schmoozing, bathed in the glow of false respectability. The day of the competition arrived, a crisp, sunny Saturday in late July. My stomach churned with a mixture of nerves and exhilarating anticipation. I arrived at the fairgrounds early, my ingredients carefully packed in coolers, my mind focused. The kitchen was a flurry of activity, filled with the aroma of spices, roasting meats, and simmering sauces. I worked methodically, precisely, channeling every ounce of my focus into my coq au vin. The chicken browned perfectly, the vegetables softened to just the right tenderness, the red wine reduction shimmered with rich intensity. My risotto was creamy yet firm, each grain distinct. The presentation was meticulous, a vibrant symphony of colors and textures on the plate. When it was time for judging, I presented my dish with a quiet confidence I hadn't felt in years. The judges, a renowned local restaurateur, a food critic from the city paper, and a veteran home economist, sampled each entry with serious expressions. I watched their faces as they tasted mine, looking for any flicker of approval, any hint of appreciation. The restaurateur nodded slowly, thoughtfully, taking a second bite. The food critic scribbled notes furiously. The home economist smiled, a genuine, warm smile. It was enough. I knew I had done well. Now, for the climax of my revenge. While the judges deliberated, I made my move. I approached Mr. Henderson, Sarah and Mark's boss, who was chatting jovially with the mayor near the stage. He recognized me from community events and always had a kind word. "Mr. Henderson," I began, my voice calm and steady, "I apologize for interrupting, but I have something urgent that I believe you need to see. It concerns Sarah and Mark, and it directly impacts the reputation of your firm." His jovial demeanor immediately shifted to one of concern. "Oh. What is it, Arthur?" I handed him the anonymous packet I had meticulously prepared. "I found this. It appears to be evidence of an ongoing affair between Sarah and Mark, conducted using company resources and time, and it even details plans for an upcoming romantic trip to Paris, disguised as a business conference." I kept my face impassive, my tone neutral. I felt it was my civic duty to bring this to your attention, given the potential for scandal and the damage it could do to your company's good name. Mr. Henderson's eyes widened as he flipped through the documents. His face grew increasingly pale, a mixture of shock and disbelief. He quickly excused himself, pulling out his phone and making a call, his voice low and urgent. Then came the announcement. The host, a local TV personality, boomed into the microphone, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have our winner for the savory dishes category. And the blue ribbon goes to Arthur Jenkins." A ripple of applause swept through the crowd. I walked to the stage, a genuine smile gracing my lips, the blue ribbon feeling heavy and triumphant in my hand. The local news camera zoomed in on me. I held up my plate, presenting my masterpiece to the world. "Mr. Jenkins," the host beamed, "tell us about this magnificent dish." I looked directly into the camera, knowing Sarah would be watching, either live or on the replay. "Well," I began, my voice clear and steady, "this is a deconstructed coco vin, a dish I poured my heart and soul into. Some people," I paused, letting the implication hang in the air, "might say that a dish like this is barely edible. But I believe, with enough passion, dedication, and a commitment to flavor, anything can be transformed into something truly extraordinary." The crowd chuckled, thinking it was a clever turn of phrase. But I knew, and Sarah would know, exactly what I meant. As I stepped off the stage, I saw her. Sarah stood frozen in the crowd, her face a mask of horror. She had obviously just learned about the packet I handed to Mr. Henderson. Her eyes, usually so calculating and composed, were wide with panic. Mark, standing a few feet away, looked equally stunned, frantically checking his phone. The chaos that followed was swift and delicious. News of Mr. Henderson's urgent phone calls and the hushed, frantic conversations quickly spread. Sarah and Mark were pulled aside by Mr. Henderson, their faces etched with guilt and desperation. The whispers started, then grew into a murmur, then into outright gossip. The blue ribbon I held was more than just an award, it was a symbol of my rebirth, my victory over her contempt. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new unreleased stories here every day. Each one more intense than the last. The aftermath was exactly as I had envisioned, perhaps even more satisfying. Within 24 hours, the local news, usually reserved for quaint human interest stories, broke the scandal. Top real estate executives fired amidst affair and misuse of company funds. The story spread like wildfire through Maple Creek. Sarah and Mark were summarily dismissed from their positions at the real estate firm, their reputations utterly destroyed. The Paris trip, of course, was cancelled. Mark's wife, a kind woman I barely knew, contacted me a few days later. She was devastated, but also grateful for the information, as it allowed her to confront Mark with undeniable proof. They divorced, a messy and painful process, but she eventually thanked me for giving her the truth. Sarah, stripped of her job, her reputation, and her gourmet king, was left with nothing but the wreckage of her lies. She tried to deny everything, to manipulate, to beg. But I had the evidence, cold and irrefutable. I filed for divorce immediately. There was no going back. The woman who had scoffed at my barely edible cooking was now barely able to stomach the consequences of her own actions. She moved out, leaving behind a hollow shell of what was once our home, and what was once her carefully curated image. As for me, the county fair blue ribbon was just the beginning. The local TV segment about my winning dish went viral in our small town, and suddenly, everyone wanted to taste Arthur Jenkins's coq au vin. The local newspaper did a feature story on me, highlighting my passion for cooking and my surprising victory. I even started getting requests to cater small events. My life, once perfect, in a way that felt stifling and ultimately false, was now genuinely fulfilling. I continued teaching, but cooking, once a hobby, had become a true passion, a source of profound joy and unexpected opportunity. I started a small online blog, Arthur's Edible Adventures, where I shared recipes and stories. It took off, connecting me with a community of food lovers who appreciated my honest approach and, yes, my flair. I learned invaluable lessons from this painful ordeal. I learned that trust, once broken, is impossible to fully repair. I learned that true strength comes not from avoiding conflict, but from confronting betrayal with courage and intelligence. And most importantly, I learned that what one person dismisses as barely edible can, with enough dedication and self-belief, become a blue ribbon masterpiece. The sweet taste of victory, the genuine appreciation from others, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I stood up for myself were far more nourishing than any meal Sarah and Mark could have ever shared. My plate was full, finally, with authenticity and self-respect. And it tasted absolutely delicious. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.